Howdy, lovely listeners. Welcome to Better Off Saucy, the unfiltered scoop on what I've been thinking about this week. What exactly has been on my noggin, you ask? Wine poisoning! Today's wondrous pilot episode covers a fascinating incident regarding European sweet wine production, aka Près de Katzwein. So, fun fact, I happen to speak German, so for this episode I'm going to be talking about Austrian wine. So, German, have fun. So I can pronounce stuff like that. Have fun. Anyway, back to what I was saying. So, sweet wine production had a very, very, very weird history. Specifically in Austria in the 1980s. It was kind of a free-for-all. It was insane. And that's sort of what led to this crazy-ass incident. I don't know what happened. I don't know who let this happen. But, too many hands passed through too many things, and so then it led to this incredibly murky business practice that resulted in some pretty bad shit. Pretty fatal ass flaw in the supply chain, a chemical catastrophe, if you will. So I have to disclaim, I will mention suicide at one point, so, if you don't want to listen to that, you can leave, I don't care. And that's pretty much it. Without further ado, enjoy this shit. I don't know. It's gonna be pretty interesting. But yeah, so I found about this through... Shout out Frederick Knudsen. He has a wonderful episode of this on his series Down the Rabbit Hole. Very much recommend checking out. It's very fucking good. He talks about a lot of insane, weird internet rabbit holes, but this is one of them. If you did, enough snooping around, you'd, discover, some pretty weird, obscure stuff that's happened. He has one about, mouse experiments, I'm pretty sure. That one I have not seen, but I've heard a lot of people talk about it and how good it is. And his style of editing is pretty cool. So I very much recommend you check that out. But yeah, so I kind of got curious about this particular topic, and I was like, I'm just going to do some digging on my own, because why not? Just going to look around and see what happens. Also, this episode's probably going to be really short, because I didn't have a lot initially written for this, but I'm just kind of working with what I got. So, I could just, expand on it. Yeah, so, I had some own questions regarding this incident, so I kind of just was like, this is interesting. I want to know more. And I found some interesting stuff a little bit. Not too much more, but, enough that's, compelling. So, yeah. So, I delved deeper into the fishy business, right? And so, so kind of where this starts is at an Austrian wine plant. I don't know the year at this point, but this was when the market was very lucrative, because in Germany there was lots of demand for sweet wine, but there really wasn't many places that could make it. So what happened was they were like, okay, we gotta find a place to get it from. And they were like, oh, Austria, our neighbors. Hey, could you make us some sweet wine? Sure. Creates business for them, everything's great. And it was people didn't really think much of it for a while, until sort of around this late 70s, early 80s, people were starting to get really worried. Particularly this one incident where one morning, as one of these wine companies was loading these tank trucks filled with wine, one wine merchant witnessed water being pumped into the tanks through this big hose thing, and he was like, what the hell? That's not right. I'm gonna approach the wine control. And they were like, we'll look into it, but, it's gonna take a while, 6 months about, and they were like, fuck. He was like, damn, I don't know what to do. And he just thought it was weird that they didn't really care about it, because, why would you not care that there's water being pumped into the wine? That doesn't make much sense. And when he approached the Ministry of Agriculture about the problem, he went to another facility, the Ministry of Agriculture, and he discovered there was, 18 inspectors for 60,000 different fucking companies. That's a lot of companies, and that's way too little a number of inspectors. That's not anywhere near enough that's gonna possibly, So, it's bonkers. There's no other word for it, it's just bonkers. I have bonkers underlined. And this tiny-ass amount of inspectors obviously had a cause, but the cause is crazy. And that's what I'm getting into now, and it's diethylene glycol, aka one of the active ingredients in antifreeze. So, like, another word for this controversy is the antifreeze wine controversy, or something. Like, I was reading, like, they called it the antifreeze wine. I just kept seeing those two words in all the articles about this incident. And yes, it's true. Diethylene glycol is used in antifreeze. It is a common chemical in industrial solvents as well, like wallpaper remover, and it's often, obviously, antifreeze, wallpaper remover. These are not good things that humans should be consuming. And it's also used in the manufacturing of paper, like tobacco products, as a moisture retainer. So, not good. Fun fact, it causes vomiting, diarrhea, liver and kidney failure, neurodamage, paralysis, and it can kill you. Very bad chemical. Like, overall, just do not consume this. Don't try this at home. Absolutely not. Like, I do not condone drinking diethylene glycol. Please do not try it. Oh, and I'm gonna call it DEG after a while, because, like, I like diethylene glycol, but that's a mouthful. DEG. And yeah, so what happened was, they found that a lot of the wine in Austria contained DEG. They found that, like, each one contained about, like, 0.1 gram per liter, which doesn't sound too much. Like, oh, it's a 0.1. No. That's a lot. That's a lethal fucking dosage. If it was, like, 0.0000000, like, by, like, a lot of zeros, 1, probably fine. But, like, 0.1 is a sincerely large amount of diethylene glycol, like, enough to fucking kill you, because you don't need a lot of it to be consumed for it to hurt your body in a lot of ways. So it converts. The reason it's so deadly is that it in your liver, once it enters your body and goes to your liver, it converts into hydroxyethoxyacetic acid, which is such a mouthful, but it's a badass chemical. Also, diglycolic acid. You like glycolic acid's one thing, diglycolic acid's a whole other ballpark, and once it reaches the kidneys, yikes. It's gonna be bad because your cells are gonna literally start dying from the inside out, aka necrosis. Yay! So basically, cell death. So basically, the chemical converts into two even more deadly chemicals, and then just starts killing your vital organs. Just 'cause, yeah. So, this was a problem, right? And why the hell were they putting this chemical into the wine? Well, to understand that, we have to understand a lot about the Austrian authorities and about the process of fermentation in wine. So to start with the fermentation, wine is made from old grapes, right? That's pretty much given. Vineyards in Austria tend to leave grapes on the vine for as long as possible in order to maximize their harvest. So at the end of each summer, they sell large amounts of the wine in bulk. And the methods replace smaller wineries by outcompeting them with cheap mass quantities of wine. The DEG, it has like a sweet sort of taste to it. So when these companies mass produce their wine, they wanted that specific sweet taste and hired a sort of set of chemists to kind of make a sweet tasting additive, basically. Like, they couldn't really sweeten the wine that much. So this was their best bet. And they finally found, after the investigation was like kind of wrapping up about how this whole debacle happened, they found that the guy that actually involved this chemical diethylene glycol was Ned Raskin Adrazi, and he went on to become a wine consultant. So, and this addition of DEG was in order to, it's because of, like, climate change, specifically. Because Austrian, grapes, like, really required a certain amount of rain, and not too much rain. Like, they didn't really get a lot of rain, but this one particular summer in 1982. In 1982, they had a really horrible summer, and it caused all of the grapes to fall off the vine, and they became sour. So it wasn't really that good. That's why they had to add this chemical that made everything sweet. And so on July 11th... Oh, and the other thing is that it's sweet, but it's completely odorless, too, which is really weird. On July 11th, a 36-year-old German man bought 50 bottles of Predicats wine, and he began reporting stomach cramps, kidney stones, and shaking uncontrollably, which is really fucking horrible to think about how painful that must have been. Just a day later, an incident where 11 adults, that's a lot of people, shared wine at a birthday party and reported feeling sick the next day. 4 years before these tests on the wine began, this German guy traveling to Vienna drank a giant amount of this wine on the trade ride home. So he's just chilling on the ride back. He had to be fucking hospitalized, and he suffered liver failure. And he almost died, but he didn't, actually. There's a lot of reports initially that he died. He did not die. But yeah. And then, the other thing that's important to note here is that Austrian authorities were super understaffed. There was, like, not really that many of them. And they were overworked. They didn't really have any capacity to keep adding on to their probably already big-ass list of stuff to do for the whole country of Austria. And they couldn't really put a warrant against companies suspected of utilizing suspicious practices. Like, they just didn't really notice what was going on until it was way too late. Proper investigations and inspections of wine production were neglected as a result of this shortage of Austrian authorities. Like, they just couldn't really do the stuff that they really wanted to. And in 1985, on April 23rd, the public was officially warned. Finally. It took them that long. But then they were like, okay, guys, the jig is up. Something's wrong with our wine. 2 million liters were confiscated. That's a lot of fucking wine, by the way. That's like a shit ton. Oh, and this is really crazy. Due to poor communication, a lot of the wines were individually tested hundreds of times, which slowed down the fucking process of being able to actually determine whether they were safe to drink or not by, like, a fuck ton. And on top of it, they began diluting solutions of this stuff. Like, they were diluting the wine with water as, like, to prevent the tests from coming up to, like, positive for DEG. So they were trying to, like, get away with still selling diethylene glycol in their wines, which is insane. The chemical investigation initially thought this was an isolated incident relating to cheaper wines. But, well, they were sorely mistaken. Because once word caught on that these practices were being cracked down on, companies intended to rid themselves of evidence by dumping the contaminated wine into the fucking sewer. Which is nuts. And this had a ripple effect, where bacterial colonies used to treat sewage were breaking down due to the addition of the DEG. Which is great, and that the sewage just seeped into the rivers, and it was just basically like putting cholera in your river. Like, that's a really bad idea. That's gonna just kill so much shit that shouldn't die. This action unintentionally basically aired out their dirty laundry for the whole entire country to see. These fucking companies were slaughtered by this shit. They were like, nah, hell, we can't cover up our reputation anymore. There is shit in the water. Because of us. And that'd be such a bad thing to experience, just in hindsight. Like, yeah, no. So eventually, contaminated wine would be put into an industrial antifreeze. Thankfully, the wine didn't really re-enter the ecosystem, but in total, they destroyed 27 million liters of wine, or approximately 7.1 million fucking gallons. 7.1 million gallons. Oh yeah, also 28 people were arrested by Austrian authorities in regard to this incident, including the guy who put DEG in the wine, or had the idea to come up with that. And some of the parties attempted to avoid the conflict by placing glycol expenses on their income taxes. I found that through research. I thought that was so funny. Like, no, you're not tax exempt from this just because you think, no. Really dumb. One of the most crazy things I found, one dude killed himself because of this, which is insane. Carl Grill, he was a proprietor for Firma Gebrüder Grill, which was like this wine firm that used glycolic acid in their stuff. Not what glycolic acid? DEG. Diethylene glycol. He died after his suicide attempt, unfortunately, rest in soul, but, you know, he's gone. And it was after he was sentenced, like, to prison for being, like, a collaborator in that kind of DEG group of people who were like, okay, this is a bad chemical, but we're still going to sell it to the public anyway. The entire Austrian wine industry could have literally gone the same way. The scandal absolutely destroyed a wine market in Austria that would take over a decade to recover. Like, it would take a whole decade for them to get the sales back up after the incident. So, like, in 1985, their sales were at, like, 45 million. And then they dropped next year to 4.4. To get back up to 45 million, they had to wait till 2001. That's crazy. That's actually so long for a market to fucking suffer like that. Like, Jesus Christ. So, no. And then when this initially happened, the authorities were like, no, nothing's going to come from it. Everyone's going to forget. They did not forget. In fact, it literally prevented people from trusting Austrian wine cellars for, like, years. Now it's really good. Now the quality testing is insane, but that's what it took. This is what it took for people to care about the quality of wine, because it could have actually killed people if they hadn't thought about it, you know? And West German Chancellor Helmut Kohl described this as catastrophic. I can't think of a better word for this. I'm not gonna lie, he was right. The mayor of Rust, a village that mainly grew and exported wine, was quoted to say, "This is the worst disaster to hit the region since World War II." That's a loaded fucking statement. And for nobody to fucking think about this, like, the fact that nobody knows about this crazy thing that happened, it's like, what? Anyway, this incident also caused conservatives to attack socialist Chancellor Fred Sinowatz. They were like, dude, you can't get away with this anymore. If you're fucking scientists, we're just sitting around doing fuck ass and not actually investigating this crap. But this dramatically improved the quality, which I just mentioned. The story serves as a reminder, sort of, about, like, you know, the socialist thing is crazy. I don't know. There was, like, a whole political war attached to this, too. That's a whole other can of worms that I'm not going to get into. But yeah, this is about transparency, really. And I think that it serves as a reminder that corporations should really be transparent about what they do and what they decide to give us. We should always be considerate of that kind of thing when purchasing anything. Like, we don't really want to, you know, like, think twice. It's just basic sense. Any kind of lack of inspectors or inconspicuous manufacturing, that's gotta be weird. It's not a good combo. Like, no, don't oblige with that kind of thing. It's just not cool. So what do we learn, kids? Don't trust companies. I don't even trust health inspectors in the U.S. I've seen way too much bar rescue to know they don't do shit. There are still roaches and rats and things and mold and gross all the time. Even the place I used to work, we had mold on some of our stuff. It happens. We threw it out, though, because we actually know how to handle that kind of thing. But, like, the rot is inevitable. That's something I always say to myself. Maybe I'm just weird. Maybe I comfort myself in weird ways. I have no idea. And as always, thank you for listening. I think you are always better off saucy. It's Christmas. Let's go home.